Hi. Some of you will be aware of that freak wormhole that opened up in the fabric of the space-time continuum, carrying an unfortunate comet from the Earth across infinite reaches of space to a distant galaxy where strange and warlike beings were poised on the brink of frightful interstellar battle. When these strange beings realized that the comet had come from the direction of Earth, which was therefore responsible for such terrible destruction, they decided to attack it. For thousands more years, the mighty ships tore across the empty wastes of space and finally dived screaming onto the first planet they came across, which happened to be the Earth, where due to a terrible miscalculation of scale, the entire battle fleet was accidentally swallowed by a small dog. That quote from Douglas Adams' most useful book for the space traveler, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, suggests several things. First, avoid careless talk. Second, expect the unexpected, generally but especially when in charge of an intergalactic battle fleet. Third, do your research before you take significant action. And fourth, my lifetime's ambition was to be a starfighter pilot. The quote was also useful in having to give Julian a title for this talk, as the third book in the series is called Life, the Universe and Everything. And so I chose Life, the Universe and ... me. Actually, it pretty much gave me free rein to talk about anything, which was important at the time, as I had absolutely no idea what I was going to talk about. But it also sets me in context, an insignificant part of the universe, true, just like the rest of you, but also someone with some experience of the universe and of life. And so I want to share a little bit about me, the me that some of you will know, some of you may have forgotten, but many of you will not be familiar with. And this is important. We are one and the same person throughout life, but during it, we are many different things. Start the rolling slides. I've been a government minister now for 10 years. How this totally unpredictable event ever happened, the Hitchhiker's Guide would likely have concluded that it was in fact an occurrence generated by the improbability drive. But I wasn't always a politician, and many people now see me as that and only that. I guess that in a way, a love for science fiction is escapism. The same can probably be said about my passion for the performing arts. Theatre is one of several things that impacted greatly on me and in my development as a person and gave me confidence from an early age. My first performance was at the Inces Hall when I was 8. There I was one of about 20 quips and cranks, a type of pixie in a school play. My brother Joe was always in school plays. My father, my aunt, my grandfather and great-uncle were all performers, especially of zarzuela, in the then famous Agrupación Artística Calpe. So I grew up in that atmosphere. But the game changer for me was my being awarded the Best Junior Player Trophy in the '69 Drama Festival, age 13, for what was actually quite a minor part in a play, interestingly, with the title The Business of Good Government. This was a nativity play with a difference, centered around King Herod's realization that the child Jesus must be killed in order to preserve the government. I guess my first contact with politics. Little did I know that I would play Herod himself 6 years later in a school production of Jesus Christ Superstar, and even less, that what was perhaps to be my most memorable performance some 2 decades later in St. Michael's Cave. I carried on acting at uni, and my return to Gib got me back on the local stage with the leading role in the Scottish play, a return to musicals, playing another bad guy, Prince John in Arrow, the legend of Robin Hood, and then in a return to dance in productions both by dancer and urban dance, notably as a mature Danny in a version of Grease, and probably my most fun part, Rafiki in The Lion King. All these were staged in one of my beloved creations, the Alameda Open Air Theatre. So I've always considered culture and the arts to be at the center of every community. And what is a community but the sum of all of us? So they're also in our hearts. The other great influence in my life was, of course, the Scouts. My grandfather and my uncle had started the first group of Scouts outside the UK in Gib back in 1908. My father became commissioner and I joined the Wolf Cubs as I was nearly 8. I was passionate about the Scouts. It added a dimension to my childhood and youth that was simply not available at school, where I was very quiet, very shy, and a very studious geek. But in the Scouts, I was a different person, outgoing, keen on all things outdoor, always wanting to do something new. I went through the ranks, Queen Scout, Scout leader, and of course I had my band and corps of drums, which I led for many years, from Gibraltar to the King's birthday celebration in Tangier, all the way to the Royal Tournament at Earl's Court. Having responsibility to run a patrol as a patrol leader aged 13 presented me with challenges and gave me skills that I would otherwise not have developed. And keeping the Scout promise and Scout law gave me values I would not otherwise have understood so young, values that I keep to this day. Scouting, the outdoor life, camping at Governor's Lookout, hikes and so on, tied in so very well with my love of nature. This love of nature, I think, started with my great aunt Enriqueta, who told me stories of her childhood in the countryside near Sanlúcar. During the days of the closed frontier in particular, as a teenager, the Upper Rock was my playground, and my knowledge of Gibraltar's wildlife expanded through first-hand experience and became intimate. That led me, together with a small group of school friends, to form the Gibraltar Ornithological Group, which eventually became GONS, and of course led to my studies and my profession as a biologist. At choosing A-levels, I was totally torn between the arts and the sciences, but the sciences clinched it. I guess the die had been cast years before, when I passed my 11+ exam to get into grammar school, and my parents, as a reward, asked me to choose between a bicycle and a pair of binoculars, and I chose the binoculars. And so on to Royal Holloway College in London and to Magdalen College, Oxford, when I shared corridors with eminent scientists. That again was unexpected and could easily not have happened. It's a long story, but it led me to learning to punt along the ices and becoming the world expert to this day on the Iberian wall lizard. So I returned home, and after about a year as a supply teacher in Bayside, I joined the civil service. That was a tremendous experience. I learned so much and developed a love and respect for the civil service that continues to this day. I ended up as a hospital manager and then general manager of the GHA. Working in healthcare is transformational. It gives you such a perspective on life, on its vulnerability and its value. It touches your heart in a way that few other professions can. I remember that as hospitals manager, I was able, probably for the first time, to take decisions that made a real difference. Back then, in the late 80s, it was me who ensured for the first time that young children could visit their parents if they were very sick in hospital, and that newborn babies could be next to their mums and not in an impersonal nursery at the other end of the ward. I loved my work in health and all the people who worked there. But then a casual conversation led me to make a proposal to convert the totally derelict Alameda Gardens into a botanic garden. This was, of course, utter madness. It was also totally unexpected. Starting virtually alone, I slowly built up the team, and we did it. 20 years later, I was astonished as I looked back at the beauty of that magical place, at the theatre, the wildlife park, the special plants. And of course, together with Leslie Linares and Arturo Harper, one fine May morning, we found the last 3 remaining plants of the Gibraltar campion and saved it from extinction. And then there's my southern horizon. After decades of wanting to know Morocco better, I got the opportunity to lead a research project in Morocco with GONS, together with teams from Rabat and Tetuan universities. From lowland wetlands to mountain crags, we went searching for birds and rare plants, driving along the beaches in Asila and through the fields of cannabis in Ketama. Coming to the border from Morocco into Ceuta, through lines of Guardia Civiles and sniffer dogs, was always a worry when you had a boot full of dry plant samples, kept dry with bags of white, powdery silica gel. And when you knew that there must be traces of very odorous cannabis on your car tires. Except when, to the amazement of your passengers, the Guardia Civil at your window salutes you and says, "Tú eres John Cortes. ¡Qué honor conocerte! Al regreso de tu expedición botánica. Pase, pase!" He was from Algeciras, learning English and regularly watched GBC News. True story. And that leads me to my time as Justice of the Peace. What an absolute honor. Being woken up at night by an RGP officer wanting you to sign the warrant. But that was more than compensated by the experience this gave me of things judicial and of what is happening out there in some areas of society that some of us have no regular contact with. I'll never forget the young man who I'd sent to prison for 6 months, stopping me in the streets. I thought he was going to do something unpleasant to me, but he thanked me as he introduced me to his girlfriend for having helped him see the error of his ways. I have been privileged in my life to work in many, many very different areas and to meet many, many people. But now, 10 years after I changed jobs, I sometimes have to make the effort to remember what life was like then. Much has happened in the last 10 years. Most significant, I am now a grandfather. My grandchildren are there in the front row. A totally new experience. And family is such an important part of what my universe is too. But this is not about me. It's about us and how we see and even judge people. When you see someone now, you're looking at a snapshot, a cross-section taken at this time and in this place. There's much, much more that makes up a person, a great deal more hidden inside the book's cover, a cover that changes and evolves, but the content remains. And to end, according to what you all now know is that most invaluable of reference books, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the finding of the answer to the question of the meaning of life, the universe and everything was entrusted to the supercomputer Deep Thought, specially built for this purpose. It took Deep Thought 7.5 million years to compute and check the answer, which turns out to be 42. Deep Thought pointed out that the answer seems meaningless because the beings who instructed it never knew what the question was. Which reminds me a little bit about politics, the next stage in my life, which ended in my being part of a cabinet of colleagues, having to lead Gibraltar to the most harrowing days since the war. But my journey into politics, in fact, is almost entirely the fault of one unfortunate incident with, of all things, a butterfly net. That's a story for another day. Thank you.